We were born in 1964, brothers and one sister, fed by a deep faith in God and in ourselves, with a common purpose: to fight the cause for those who can't, to grow and develop our St. Lucia to meet the basic social and economic needs of our people, a job for every man and woman, decent, affordable housing, universal education, quality medical care regardless of level of income, adequate social security, especially for senior citizens and the disabled. We believe in religious freedom, democracy and the rule of law, racial and social harmony, elimination of gender discrimination and political victimization, free enterprise, cultural, social and economic progress, conservation of our environment, economic empowerment of St. Lucians and indigenous ownership of economic activity, economic empowerment of St. Lucians and indigenous ownership of economic activity, regulation of foreign investment for the development of our country. We are the party with vision. We are the party that develops. We are proud of our decades of success. We believe in ourselves. We are proud of ourselves. We are the preferred party. We are the party of choice. 2024, together we celebrate our 60th birthday. We are one family. We are the United Workers, and this is our party, the United Workers' Party.
What if you didn't need a lie detector? Eye contact is linked with truthfulness.
A drastic move by the National Housing Corporation has led to the termination of 2 lucrative contracts for the construction company Fresh Start.
The board took the decision that not only Shock but both Shock and Talvin developments,
Eye contact,
which were
eye contact,
supposedly the subject matter of an 80-20 arrangement.
eye contact is linked with truthfulness.
How much is it costing us for that termination?
Well, put it this way.
When people are lying, they are less likely to be specific. This is a massive red flag.
Both of the developments were started illegally. And once you start an illegal development, you do it at your own risk.
So how is it illegal?
Because there was no DC approval for either of them.
The 2 housing schemes under the UWP administration were developed with the aim of providing low-cost housing while tackling the issue of unplanned settlements.
Some liars are just really good at acting.
In these estimates, Madam President, consultancy votes increased from $81 million last year, 2022, to $122 million this year, an increase of $41 million for consultancy. Job for the boys, girls, friends, families, everybody. So in one stroke of the pen, the Honorable Prime Minister, who's the Minister of Finance, can say, we will reduce our consultancy by $33 million because crime and security is important, and we will take that $33 million and put it towards crime and security. Is that not a fair assertion? I think it's a fair assertion, but anyway.
Budget for jazz.
Yes, been also. I'm not even sure what's in other people. I know what's in. I don't think there's borrowing on people. I don't think so. Let me check. There's borrowing. Which one? For what? If you think the other part of the city below there, yeah.
We were born in 1964, brothers and one sister, fed by a deep faith in God and in ourselves, with a common purpose: to fight the cause for those who can't, to grow and develop our St. Lucia to meet the basic social and economic needs of our people, a job for every man and woman, decent, affordable housing, universal education, quality medical care regardless of level of income, adequate social security, especially for senior citizens and the disabled. We believe in religious freedom, democracy and the rule of law, racial and social harmony, elimination of gender discrimination and political victimization, free enterprise, cultural, social and economic progress, conservation of our environment, economic empowerment of St. Lucians and indigenous ownership of economic activity, economic empowerment of St. Lucians and indigenous ownership of economic activity, regulation of foreign investment for the development of our country. We are the party with vision. We are the party that develops. We are proud of our decades of success. We believe in ourselves. We are proud of ourselves. We are the preferred party. We are the party of choice. 2024, together we celebrate our 60th birthday. We are one family. We are the United Workers, and this is our party.
If you ask me about the economy, I know a little bit about it. Not much, a little bit. I'll talk about it. A little. If you ask me about the economy, I know a little bit about it. Not much, a little bit. I'll talk about it. A little.
What if you didn't need a lie detector? Eye contact is linked with truthfulness.
A drastic move by the National Housing Corporation has led to the termination of 2 lucrative contracts for the construction company Fresh Start.
The board took the decision that not only Shock, but both Shock and Talvin developments,
Eye contact.
which were
Eye contact.
supposedly the subject matter of an 80-20 arrangement.
Eye contact is linked with truthfulness.
How much is it costing us for that termination?
Well, put it this way,
When people are lying, they are less likely to be specific. This is a massive red flag.
both of the developments were started illegally. And once you start an illegal development, you do it at your own risk,
So how is it illegal?
because there was no DC approval for either of them.
The 2 housing schemes under the UWP administration were developed with the aim of providing low-cost housing while tackling the issue of unplanned settlements.
Some liars are just really good at acting.
In this estimate, Madam President, consultancy votes increased from $81 million last year, 2022, to $122 million this year, an increase of $41 million for consultancy. Job for the boys, girls, friends, families, everybody. So in one stroke of the pen, the Honorable Prime Minister, who's the Minister of Finance, can say, we will reduce our consultancy by $33 million because crime and security is important, and we will take that $33 million and put it towards crime and security. Is that not a fair assertion? I think it's a fair assertion, but anyway.
Budget for jazz.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the media, and a special good morning to those listening to us on live streaming. This morning, we have here with us the leader of the opposition, the Honorable Alan Chasney, who will be, during this press briefing, making some comments about a litigious matter that took place recently pertaining to the case of the Controller of Customs and the Honorable Ernest Hilaire. Judgment was made on the matter, and of course you've probably heard some comments in the media as such, and you will hear from the Honorable Leader of the Opposition what actually transpired, and there will be other subjects of litigation that he will touch upon as well. And what we will do is, after the Honorable Leader of the Opposition has made his presentation, we will permit a period for questions. What I would appreciate is if, for the benefit of our listeners, if you would identify yourself and your media house when asking your questions. Thank you very much. As I would like to hand over to the Leader of the Opposition, the Honorable Alan Chasney, to make his presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. PRO, and ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me start off by saying how proud I am of the results of our two athletes who are in Europe. I'm sure it's not the outcome that a lot of us would have anticipated, but I have to say to you that we all should be extremely proud of the achievements that our athletes had, and more importantly, I think the promise of what is yet to come. They're both two very young athletes who are now on the international world stage, and certainly in the case of Julian, to be able to make it to the finals is just really astonishing. So I'm very proud of their achievements. I'm also very proud of the achievements of our under-15 team. And I think it speaks very much to the success of the Gros Islet Sports Academy. You know, this idea that we can bring young athletes, particularly ones that are playing in a team environment, to live and eat and practice together for longer periods of time. I think it's going to ensure much success for St. Lucia down the road. And I'm really hoping that what we started will only be made better. I want to really emphasize that United Workers' Party is not about one-upmanship. It's about each of us contributing to our country, and the next person who comes along builds upon that success. So I really want to see the academy to be expanded, strengthened. I would certainly like to see an academy in the South, as we had planned, and the continuation of the development of sports in St. Lucia. So again, much congratulations to our athletes and to all the persons that have provided support to those two athletes and many of our other athletes. Today, I want to first of all read a statement, and then I will provide some background and continuation after my statement. So last week, the judge of the High Court denied my application for leave for a judicial review of the Controller of Customs' decision to withdraw the case against Ernest Hilaire filed by the Department of Customs. This case was brought by Customs when a luxury vehicle, namely a Range Rover, was exported to St. Lucia from the United Kingdom in the name of the St. Lucia High Commission, but upon arrival, such vehicle was claimed personally by Ernest Hilaire. When Customs' requests for proof of individual ownership of the Range Rover were ignored by Hilaire, the Controller of Customs filed a claim. Upon the government's assuming office, the new controller, without any evidence of ownership being presented by Hilaire, withdrew the claim. The learned judge last week made clear that he would not consider the facts or merits of the case against Ernest Hilaire, but only contemplated whether our application for judicial review met the necessary threshold. He decided that we did not provide sufficient evidence as to the DPP's official role in the case, and as such, agreed that the Controller of Customs was allowed to use his discretion to withdraw or terminate the case. Surprisingly, considering this was an administrative matter, an application for leave, the judge also awarded cost to the state. This decision in no way exonerates Ernest Hilaire of the allegations made against him. My legal advisors and I are currently reviewing the court's decision with the intention of appealing the decision. It is my strong belief that this is a matter of public interest, and the Controller of Customs owes the public of St. Lucia an explanation of his unilateral decision to withdraw the case. The person involved is a senior politician with a lot of influence within this administration, and we must all be satisfied that he was not treated differently from any ordinary citizen. Crucially, given the heightened publicity surrounding this case, it was imperative that the Controller protect the integrity of his office by being fully transparent. The purpose of the judicial review is to hold the Controller of Customs accountable to the people and to explain why he chose not to consult the Attorney General, the Director of Public Prosecutions, the Director of Finance, or the former Controller of Customs before deciding to withdraw the case. In his position, one of the most important civil service positions, integrity must guide all his decisions. He must also explain why he has accepted the bill of lading presented as proof of ownership, especially in light of the evidence that the vehicle was registered in the name of St. Lucia High Commission, which means it belonged to the government and to the people of St. Lucia. He must explain how Ernest Hilaire was able to clear a vehicle from customs duty-free here in St. Lucia without providing the requisite evidence that he owned the vehicle. The United Workers' Party will continue to pursue this matter until all legal means have been exhausted. We believe it is critical that all public officers are held accountable to their pledge to uphold the laws of the country and protect the best interests of the public without favor. No officer should be allowed simply to use his or her discretion without being transparent and accountable. This administration continues to make the decisions which put our regional and international reputation in jeopardy, and we must question public officers who will play a role in that. There is too much at stake for all of us otherwise. I'd like to read specifically from the judge's decision, and I go to page 6.25, and it says, given the sensitive nature of these proceedings, and particularly in light of the high profile of the offices held in the state by all those involved, the court should be cautious and refrain from forming or expressing any opinion on the merits of the case. Instead, the court will apply a principled approach to the question whether the application for leave to bring a claim for judicial review ought to be granted, or alternatively, whether the applicant has met the threshold requirements for the grant of leave, and this is the court's only mandate. So I want to reiterate, in no way does this judgment or is this decision of the court exonerate Ernest Hilaire with regards to what he did. What we did is we filed a case against the Controller of Customs. That's who the judicial review was targeted to, was for the Controller of Customs to explain to all of us how he used the discretionary authority that he has. That's what this case is about. I want to go on and further read. Page 12, section 53. And this is where the judge used his opinion to determine whether, in fact, leave should be granted. The applicant also relied on what was contained in the affidavit by Mr. Chico. So there was an affidavit provided in the case by the former Controller of Customs. The former Controller of Customs, in his affidavit, Mr. Chico, said ostensibly that the complaints had been lodged and they were referred to the DPP for prosecution. He said that he forwarded the files to the DPP with a view to the prosecution of the offenses being taken over by the DPP. and that the request was accompanied by a cover letter dated 18th of January 2021. So what in essence is being said is the former Controller of Customs indicated that he was in consultation with the DPP's office. He forwarded all of the files to the DPP's office and sent a letter with all of those files and handing over the prosecution of the case to the DPP. However, no letter of response from the DPP to the foregoing letter from Mr. Chico featured at all in these proceedings. Mr. Chico went on to say unequivocally that the DPP took over and essentially continued the prosecution, and that it was incorrect to say the DPP merely assisted with the prosecution. So that's what the government was implying, was the DPP's office was only assisting. The respondents presented a contrary set of facts relative to this ground. The present Controller of Customs stated in his affidavit that he found no evidence that the DPP had taken over the prosecution of the proceedings against Dr. Hilaire. However, he affirmed that the DPP assisted with the prosecution by assigning members of the staff to appear in court on behalf of the Controller of Customs. I want to reiterate that when the matter was in the courts, it was the DPP's lawyers who were in attendance during the court case. If it is found that the applicant has not met the threshold of an arguable case for judicial review on the basis that the DPP had exercised his powers pursuant to Section 73(2) of the Constitution by taking over and continuing the prosecution, the changes against Mr. Hilaire, then it would be convenient to go on to consider the second limb of the applicant's case. The court notes that the DPP who features prominently in these proceedings, insofar as it is alleged that his office had taken over the prosecution, has not been joined as a party to these proceedings, even if he did not make any decision. Assuming that he had taken over the prosecution and the same was discontinued without his consent, as it stands, there simply has not been any evidence presented to the court to substantiate that the prosecution had been taken over by the DPP. That's the fundamentals of the decision of the judge, that he was not satisfied that we provided enough evidence to show that the DPP was actually prosecuting the case. And therefore, he ruled that the Controller of Customs had the authority under the Act to make the decision. And I'm comfortable with that legally, but I believe that there are conflicts in the Controller of Customs decision making. And I feel that these things were neglected. And so that is why we genuinely believe that we have a very good case for an appeal. Now I want to say to all the public of St. Lucia that we have a very robust judicial system. If you remember, in the case that I had with Hilaire on the defamation, when the case was, the technical point was heard at the High Court, I lost. The High Court ruled that the British law did not apply. We appealed, and we won the appeal at the appeals court, the regional court. He then appealed to the Privy Council, and we won the case at the Privy Council. This case is only at its beginning. There is too much at stake for us not to continue with this case. So I want to say, this case really, I think, puts to test all of our institutions. And there are certain facts, undisputable facts, that we know. We know that when Hilaire was the High Commissioner in St. Lucia, that he purchased a vehicle in his name, which he was entitled to do. And because he was the High Commissioner in the UK, he obtained that car duty-free in the UK. So he saved about 12.5% of taxes. in the UK. When he obtained the car in his name, he then transferred the car to his brother Paul. And his brother Paul brought the car to St. Lucia, and because his brother Paul was working for a regional institution, he was entitled to the car. And legally, Ernest could transfer the car to his brother. It's a legal right. Ethically, whether in fact he should have used his position to obtain the car duty-free in the UK, using his name and using his position, and allowing that benefit to be transferred to his brother, I leave that for other people to make that determination. After that, he tried to get a car for himself. But knowing that he could not apply because 1 year had not expired, he chose to put the car in the name of a gentleman called Tafawa Williams. Tafawa was a gentleman who was working at the High Commission under the IMO, being paid for by a gentleman that we've all come to know is Dr. Jafalia. So it means that the High Commission office wrote to the British government saying that the car belonged to Tafawa Williams, even though Ernest paid for the car. I repeat that. Ernest paid for the car, but he used his position at the High Commission and wrote to the British authorities claiming that the car belonged to Tafawa so that the car could be obtained the same duty-free 12.5% savings. Tafawa Williams was rejected. I guess in a panic, they decided to put the car in the name of the St. Lucia High Commission. And all of the evidence is there. In fact, there is a letter that was written by Hilaire's personal assistant saying to the British government that they made a mistake and that the car does not belong to Tafawa Williams, but the car in fact belongs to the state. And the British government wrote back and said, to avoid any confusion, when you put the application in, when it says owner, put St. Lucia High Commission. When it says owner's address, put the High Commission address, which is what was done. So the car was registered in the name of the St. Lucia High Commission. It received incentives. In fact, that there are affidavits on file with customs from the Range Rover agency saying that the car, when they sold it to the St. Lucia High Commission. There's an affidavit on file from the Foreign Office of the UK that says when they approved the concessions with the understanding the car belonged to the state. So when Ernest then brought the car back to St. Lucia, he claimed that the car belonged to him. But what was interesting is the car was given a pre-clearance. And remember, this is a year before the elections. So this happened all the way in 2015. The elections was in 2016. So the car came back to St. Lucia, was given a pre-clearance, and he never provided the documentation to close his entry. And when it was discovered that there was some irregularities, it was the Ministry of Finance, the Director of Finance in particular, who wrote in 2018 to the Controller of Customs saying that there's information that suggests that the car belongs to the state. On the part of the Ministry of Finance, there was nothing in the record to show that they purchased the car. And equally, there was nothing in the record to say they disposed of the asset. And so they asked the Controller of Customs to please confirm who owns the car. And this went on for years. And every time that Ernest Hilaire and his lawyer, Thaddeus Antoine, were asked to provide the information, all they kept on saying is they have proof that they paid for the car and that they have the bill of lading. Now, I want to bring this bill of lading issue to rest. If you are bringing in a second-hand car, and it's an old car, and you have not been able to find where the car was registered previously, Customs can use a bill of lading. Because a bill of lading is really only to show that you're the one who put the car on the ship. So it has some assumptions that go with it. But in the case of this car, it was a brand new car. And the registration of the vehicle existed. But the problem was, the name on the registration of the car was the St. Lucia High Commission. The purpose of Customs asking Hilaire to provide this documentation is in order to determine whether in fact there was anything fraudulent that was done. So it means that if Ernest was able to provide Customs not with the registration of the vehicle, but a cabinet conclusion, or a letter from the Director of Finance saying, I authorize you to purchase your own vehicle in the name of the state, and I will give you permission to have the car back in your name afterwards. That cannot happen. The Financial Act of St. Lucia would prohibit the Director of Finance from doing that. The only entity that could do that would be Cabinet. So it means he would have to provide a Cabinet conclusion showing that he was given permission to put the car in the state's name and then to transfer it back to himself. So the purpose of the inquiry and the application to the courts was when Customs grew frustrated of him not providing the information. So they were taken to court. And the court case was a simple case. Provide the evidence to show that you own the car. And we're not prepared to accept a bill of lading because it's a brand new car. And Customs would have known and told Ernest at the time, we have documentation to show that the car was in the name of the state. Now you're telling me a new government comes in, the Controller of Customs is removed, the new Attorney General happens to be the same person that was Ernest Hilaire's lawyer on this same matter. We believe that it's the Attorney General who advised him. He, Controller of Customs, says no. Fine, you say no. Controller of Customs says he knew that the DPP was providing advice, but yet you didn't go to the DPP to ask for advice when you were withdrawing the case. There's a letter on file from the Director of Finance requesting that the Controller of Customs provides the ownership. You didn't go to the Director of Finance. The former Controller of Customs who was leading up the charge, you didn't go to him. You're saying that you sat in a room with senior officers of Customs and you all made a decision. Even though evidence is there to show that the car was registered in the name of the state. Now the most crucial point here is that Ernest was allowed to bring the car back to St. Lucia duty-free. And it's an incentive that he legally benefited from because he was a returning ambassador, High Commissioner from the UK, a returning diplomat. But there's a critical point. That benefit is given to him if he's a returning ambassador, which he was, but the car must belong to him. It means a returning ambassador cannot bring a car back duty-free and give it to his wife. He can't give it to a friend. He can't do it. He can't bring it and sell it to somebody else. It's a benefit restricted to him. Now, I've provided details, and as I said, this particular case was not about those issues. I bring up those issues only to say that this is a very important case. And it's because of the importance of this case that myself, United Workers' Party, will exhaust every legal opportunity that we have available to ourselves to bring this injustice to light. And just because an act gives a senior officer discretionary powers. It does not mean that that person is not accountable and accountable to the people as to why. There must be a reason why. You cannot just make a decision and leave us in the dark. And as I said, there's been too much discussions about what's taking place. There's too much at stake that's taking place. So that being said, over 2 weeks ago, I attended a court hearing on the continuation of my matters, my many matters. So the Suffolk Town Council case, the boundaries case, and also what has been taking place in the Parliament. And at that meeting, sorry, I'm going to ask her. I may have left it in the room. Oh no, it's here. Sorry. At that meeting, the judge provided us with some comments. And the comments pertained to letters that had been written to the registrar. And we now know that those letters were written by the Attorney General to the registrar. And what's important is that the Attorney General is a party to the case. So it wasn't to say that he was writing as the Attorney General with administrative responsibility in general. The Attorney General wrote on a particular case of which he is a party to the case. So I think it's better I read what the order that the judge now has written based on those comments and those actions. Upon the court having formed the view that in light of certain correspondence having been sent to the registrar of the High Court by one of the parties named in the current proceedings, one of which came to the attention of the judge having conduct on this matter, meaning that the judge was not copied in on the correspondence. And notwithstanding that the above mentioned correspondence related specifically to the proceedings in the present claim and was a memorandum dated the 15th of May 2023 and directed to the registrar of the High Court for the attention of the judge having conduct of these proceedings. And whereas in the court's view, the above mentioned memorandum referred to the conduct of one of the parties subsequent to the hearing of the 15th of May 2023, it was not copied to any of the other parties to the proceedings or their legal practitioners. So it means it was not copied to the other persons who were party to the case or to the lawyers representing those persons, but was in fact copied to the following persons, namely Mr. Alan Shastney in his capacity as the political leader and of the United Workers' Party and the Secretary General of the United Workers' Party. So you're saying the correspondence was sent to me not in my capacity as party to the case, but it was sent to me as the political leader of the United Workers' Party and also the General Secretary. It was this latter fact that the court finds exceedingly egregious, notwithstanding the correspondence for all intents and purposes appeared to be an interdepartmental memorandum and not an official correspondence of the Office of the High Court. And whereas said memorandum was carbon copied to the General Secretary of the United Workers' Party, who was not party to the present proceedings, and upon being made to appear to the judge having conduct of the present proceedings, that separate and apart from the correspondence already referred in the proceedings paragraph to this order, other correspondence came from the same party. So it was not just one letter, but they were several letters, who has an interest in the present proceedings before this court. So the person who wrote the letters to the registrar was a part of the case. And the registrar of the High Court, at the same time that these proceedings were alive before this court, and the conduct of any such investigation, the findings of the same and any correspondence and exchanges related to the same not having been disclosed to or brought to the attention of the judge, having conduct of the present proceedings, the subject of which the said inquiry was made. So in essence, the judge is saying that he was surprised that given the nature of what was taking place, that he was not included in the correspondence, or that he was not approached to deal with the matter. And upon it also having come to the attention of the court, having conduct of these proceedings, that on the morning of the hearing, the 15th of May, 2 of the named litigants reappeared to the office of the Registrar of the High Court to inquire as to the reason for the timing of the said application for an interim injunction made by the claimant. So one of the things is that the same Attorney General was questioning that when the application was made for the judge to hear my case with regards to what happened in Parliament, he's questioning the timing of that case. And whereas in the court's considered view, the combined effect of the circumstances mentioned in this order has the effect of being suggestive that there exists some propinquity between officers of the High Court and the judge having conduct of the matters in which one of the parties has an interest. And whereas if the party who made the inquiries and who had directed the memorandum to the Registrar of the High Court for the attention of the presiding judge had any concerns regarding the conduct, the matter before the court, then the proper procedure, in the court's view, ought to have been to forward or telegraph their concerns to the opposing party, meaning that the Attorney General should have had his attorney, who was Astafan, write to my attorney and brought the issues to his attention, and thereafter seek an audience before the presiding judge, meaning that the two lawyers then would have met with the judge openly, and the counsel for the opposing party being present to discuss these concerns. And whereas the court is of the considered view that the circumstances which the court has identified this order, that a fair-minded and informed observer, having considered the facts and circumstances of the present case, may likely conclude that there exists a real possibility that the presiding judicial officer may be biased to the extent that he may not bring an open and mind to the proceedings. So the judge is saying that he's concerned that these interferences, this egregious act, as he calls it, may give the average person, the layman, the impression that the judge is not open-minded. In fact, he's biased. Therefore, in all the circumstances of the case, and in the interest of the due administration of justice, the court has presently constituted, has formed a considered view that it ought to recuse itself from the present proceedings. Meaning the judge now, who is sitting on all of my cases, the same judge, Sean Innocent, has now recused himself because of some level of interference. He's indicated that he is now, and by this being a court order, I would have to presume that this has gone to the appropriate authorities, and hopefully this matter will be dealt with very, very quickly. But I want to say that there's a very worrying pattern of behavior that we continue to see with this government, and their disregard to the rule of law, and most importantly, to civil rights of people in this country. Upon assuming office, the first thing that this government did, informed by the Attorney General, was to say that to put a curfew in this country did not need a state of emergency. I thought that that was completely wrong. I think it's a bad precedence to have established. The state of emergency is a significant part of our Constitution to protect the rights of people. There are occasions in which a state may have to make extraordinary decisions that would suppress people's civil rights. But it has to be done and conducted in a way in which there's accountability. That's what a state of emergency does. Forget the name. It says there's the state of emergency, it says that there's a special circumstance that allows the state to suppress civil rights. But in doing that, there has to be proper documentation all along and a final report of every single action that was taken in the state of emergency. That was suppressed. People who had breached the COVID laws washed away. The situation of my case and the Prime Minister and the Speaker of the House appearing before the case, saying to the people, we came here to make sure that justice is being done, as if there is no separation between government and the judicial system. It is the most sacred of all of our constitutional rights. It is the most sacred that we have. If we allow the judiciary to be influenced by politicians or by the government, then democracy cannot exist in our country. Any democracy that is a healthy democracy depends on the independence of the court. It is fundamental in everything that we do. And so when you see a Speaker of the House last week on TV admonishing the DPP, has he forgotten that he is the Speaker of the House? That he speaks from a different platform versus when he only had his own private show? We have a Minister of Government who's on TV admonishing anybody who criticizes his government. And the one that sticks in my mind is when his account was closed, what he said about the managing director of the bank. That is now an acceptable behavior in this country. We have example after example where one is concerned about the political interference into our judiciary system. And I'm really hoping that the persons who are the custodians of the judicial system, the persons that have to ensure that they are decoupled at all times, act with haste on this. Otherwise, I'm a pragmatist. And as a pragmatist, could this government withstand more cases going against them? So the case that was being heard was what was taking place in the Parliament. I don't want to get into details because it's an ongoing case. The Sufer Town Council case, a case that's supposed to be for a civil case, recovering, they say, $32,000, but when you go into the case, it's $2,000, in which the government has spent over $500,000 to recover $30,000. Nobody says anything. Of which there are difficulty in finding witnesses because it's something that took place all the way back in 2010. And the irony of it all is that the Minister of Finance then, Stephenson King, is the senior minister in Labour. And the Minister of Local Government at the time was Richard Frederick, who is now with the Labour Party. What a twist. And then yesterday, at his press conference. What did Ernest tell you? There are more successes in the court to be had. How can he make that statement? Well, he could make that statement because when he first won, what did he say? That he's in power. And he's going to use all of his powers to come after those people who hurt him. And I can tell you who the number one person on the list is. Alan Shastney. But I'm not interested, and I have never been interested in Ernest per se. What I'm interested in is the rule of law, accountability. People are allowed to say what they want to say, but at some point they have to prove it. And we have to be patient. And I can tell you, a person who's been in the midst of it, I've had to suffer many an indication, but I believe what I've done was good. There are many insinuations that have been made and half-truths that have been said, and I've been patient. I'm not saying that we should go and overthrow the government. I've taken it to the courts, and I would hate to believe, I would be deflated. I don't even know, to think that the courts are being influenced in any way, and that there's any intimidation that's taking place in our proceedings. But I just want to thank you, and back over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. But even before we proceed, it would be remiss of me if I didn't take this opportunity to join the leader of the opposition in congratulating our athletes in Hungary who have made us proud so far. And I want to take this opportunity to wish them well as they go further in representing our proud country. I want to wish Gillian Alfred even more success in her exploits in the 200 meters, and Michael Joseph, who made the semifinals of the 400 meters.
Tough race.
It is in fact a very tough race. One of the races considered to be the toughest, and we're hoping that he will, give a good account of himself and continue to make us proud. And it is a proud moment for St. Lucia, and I just want to say that we feel very good, realizing now that some of the efforts are paying dividends, some of the efforts that have been put into the development of sports now paying dividends, and I'm hoping that that will serve as inspiration to other young athletes coming up, and that the good use will be made of the Sports Academy, as the Prime Minister has stated, and those top-class facilities that were built around the island, that more and more young people will be coming out and making use of them to develop and hone their skills. And so I say now, we are getting there. Gone are the days when St. Lucia merely participated. We are competing. And so now, ladies and gentlemen, to get back to the meat of the matter at hand, we are talking about, as was explained by the leader of the opposition, some of the issues of litigious nature that has transpired, that is taking place, and the worrying, disturbing trend that we see emerging of a government not recognizing the separation of powers and interfering and unduly trying to influence what takes place in the judiciary. And quite apart from what has been mentioned by the Prime Minister, not too long ago, we saw a government minister in the media openly displaying evidence of interference again, when we saw Richard Frederick displaying receipts of bills that were posted, documents that he should not have access to, documents that should be accessible solely to the individual or individuals concerned. But here we have a government minister who has clearly put the court in disrepute, being able to have access to such a document that he has no right to be in possession of. But that is a matter I will be making further comments on as time goes along. But now, ladies and gentlemen of the media, I would like to give you the opportunity, as I indicated before, to identify yourself and your media house and to pose whatever questions you may have to the leader of the opposition on what has been discussed this morning.
I have one question. You made a comment saying that the privileges that NSC received as a diplomat when you brought the people down to St. Lucia, you said that the privileges were only restricted to himself, and he wasn't allowed to put the vehicle name on the NSC's name. Is there any evidence that he has done so?
No, it's the other way around. In order to have benefited from the privileges, you must be first a returning diplomat, which he was. But the second thing is the vehicle that you're bringing in must belong to you. So for the controller of customs to say that the ownership of the vehicle is not important, and therefore the bill of lading is sufficient, so proof that he paid for the car and the bill of lading is sufficient, there's something wrong. The bill of lading, as I said to you, would only be used in circumstances where it's an old car and one can say, I can't find the original registration of the car. This was a brand new car, and the fact is that customs was in possession with the registration of the car, which showed that the car belonged to the High Commission. It was also in possession of an affidavit from the Range Rover dealership saying the car was sold to the High Commission. It was in possession of an affidavit from the British government, the Foreign Office, to say that the car was given incentives based on it being owned by the High Commission. So, look, there's only a couple of things that could have happened. So either while he was the High Commissioner, he chose not to get permission of the state, and he used his position and put the car in the name of the state in hoping that nobody was going to find out. So that's an abuse of office, right? But having done that, and once customs now in St. Lucia found out that the car was registered in the name of the High Commission, before he can bring the car into St. Lucia duty-free in his name, he must show what happened. And so that's why this case is so important. And clearly what we see here is collusion and an attempt to mask the facts. How did the car get registered in the registry in St. Lucia when the car was on a pre-clearance, a pre-delivery? How? And remember, the minister in charge of transportation in those days was Philip Pierre. The person who was the Minister of Foreign Affairs in those days was Alva Baptist. And then to complicate matters even more, you have a situation where you had the Dr. Jafali scandal, and now we found out that there was an account opened up in the name of the High Commission, of which the signatories on the account were Hilaire and Dr. Jafali. And we have a letter from the Auditor General in St. Lucia to say the account exists, but there's no evidence that any permission was given to open up the account, and that money was transferred into the account, and there was no evidence that that was reported to the Director of Finance, and that we know thousands of dollars of that money were transferred directly into Ernest Hilaire's personal account. Now, these are facts. These are not like when people come up and say this about me and that about me. These are facts. The letter from the Auditor General has been made public. The letter showing, the document showing the registration of the vehicle in the name of the High Commission is there. Information to show that the account was opened up, the St. Lucia IMO account. No permission. The Auditor General told you 66,500 pounds were transferred into that account. And we're worried about whether I call it a joint account or, what is going on? These are significant issues because we're dealing with a person who is the Deputy Prime Minister of this country. And if I was an average St. Lucian, and given the amount of lies that I've seen in the promises and the reversals have been made, the duplicity, the hypocrisy, look at the Bonanza land. I can go down the line of all those things that people have to, can be brought to the people's attention. And you have these facts. These are damning allegations. And if in fact they're not allowed to be brought to light, and if public officers are doing everything they can to protect, they are equally guilty. But more importantly, the concern for all of us is solutions. Today it's Alan Shastney. Who is it tomorrow? So you think they're only going to do it once?
Another question for you. The fact that the judge has recused himself, how many cases did you have?
4.
The fact that the judge has now recused himself on all cases, what does that mean for those cases in the
Well, as I said, the pragmatism in me would say that if the government intentionally did that to intimidate the judge, they succeeded. So the judge recused himself. I don't know who the new judges are going to be. I don't know how long it's going to take.
But you will be moving forward.
Well, I can't move forward. I have to wait.
I mean, when a new judge runs.
Absolutely. I mean, I speak to this with two hats. I speak to this as a person involved and being party to the case, obviously very concerned. But I also wear the hat as the political leader of the United Workers' Party, the leader of the opposition. And I'm concerned, worried, terrified of the implications that this has. And that the suggestions or the belief that people can come to, or the conclusion that people can come to, that there's intimidation, that there is no separation between the judicial system and government. And I'm really hoping, as I said to you, the custodians of this system, and understanding that we're a democracy and how important this is to a democracy, will come out very quickly to resolve this matter.
Yeah. I'm Jason Seaford. I'm a new coordinator solution.
Not new.
I'm wondering, excuse me, Jason Seaford. I mean, for the focus is there. Yes, now this is do you think people understand the importance of issues, because what you described are intricate legal issues. So someone might well ask, well, did Ernest really do anything illegal? They might hear you say, like in the clip in the press conference, that Ernest didn't do something illegal, he did something unethical. Is this an issue that is about law and government? Is this an issue that is about, I mean, it's obviously an issue that you can get political traction from. I think people are reading it that way, don't you think? Don't you think people who really understand it will understand it as something important?
So this is why I've indicated that I have been accused of sometimes not communicating properly. For that I apologize. But on issues like this, where it becomes he say, she say, then we have to depend on the judicial system and the processes we have. And that is why public officers, senior public officers, and their integrity is so important in the process. Because that's who the people are going to believe. They're not going to believe the politicians. You know, I'm supposed to say what I'm saying. Hilaire is supposed to say what he's supposed to say. Flavos is supposed to say what they say. Labor rights are supposed to say what they say. But somewhere in the middle, there's the truth. And in the meanwhile, we have to have a governing system that we have confidence in. Now, sadly, not only in St. Lucia, globally, people have become very cynical about government and it caring about the people and how it works. A lot of people think that, you know, because you're wealthy, that you have more influence, or if you don't have access to the law system. And there's probably a lot of truth to some of those statements. But to want to cover up all of this and say, well, this is much to do about nothing, I disagree. And this is why I have always tried to go through the right processes. So the first process was the Director of Finance. Right, so the Director of Finance obtained information from the UK to show that the car had been registered in the name of the St. Lucia High Commission. The Director of Finance did the right thing. Checked to see whether in fact there's any evidence to show that the car was purchased by the government. There was none. Secondly, was there any evidence to show that the car had been disposed by the government? There was none. So the entity in our system that has the capacity to determine who owns the car is Customs. So she wrote to Customs and said to Customs, here is the information we have. Can you please determine the veracity of this information? All Customs had to do, because they have a direct line to the registry in the United Kingdom, they have legal authority to call the dealer and say to the dealer, can you send me the original documentation? If the documentation comes back, which it did, to show that the car was registered in the name of the High Commission, the next thing was for the Customs to do what they did, which was to ask Ernest, can you provide the information to show how you own the car? He provided information to show he paid for the car, and he provided the bill of lading. That's not sufficient. And why is it not sufficient? Because in his circumstance, he was also the High Commissioner. Now, is it for Customs to conduct that investigation? The answer is no. That's outside of the realm of Customs. But what Customs needed to do was to respond to the Director of Finance and say, our findings are that the car was registered in the name of the High Commission. And at that point, the Attorney General and the DPP and the Police Commissioner make a determination if in fact that there was anything illegal that was done. It is my understanding that the DPP said the first thing that he had to do was to go to the court. Because if you remember, there were several court cases that Customs lost, right? In which they had to return the assets and pay fines back to the people. And the court, in essence, said, when you reach a matter of this seriousness, before you impose any penalties on them, take it to court and allow it to be an order of the court so there can't be any dispute. It's being done transparently. And that's exactly what was being done. Now, it's for you to make a determination in the exercise of his discretionary power, and given the seriousness of this matter, and given the information that was available and that we all know, is it fair for you to believe that he was right to use his discretionary authority to say he didn't need to show ownership of the car? And I argue no. The judge in this particular case, which that's part of the process, appealing high court cases is common practice. And he may have gotten it right, and I'll be corrected. But I personally believe, and I wait for my lawyers to advise me correctly, but to say because the DPP did not write back was evidence enough that the DPP was not involved. You had an affidavit from the former controller of Customs saying that he sent the documents and he believed that the gentleman was running the case. In the courthouse, the DPP's office was representing the state. But those are technical matters, and I think it's very important that we're getting down to those level of nuances. But to answer your question, Jason, that this is a very serious situation. It's not about just importing the car. Like I heard Ernest's lawyer, what's his name, Thaddeus, go on to a TV show and said what transpired, if you remember, was no different than going down to Point Seraphin and finding a friend who has an airline ticket and getting that person to buy the duty-free items for you. In this particular case, we're dealing with a high commissioner and a person who is a deputy prime minister of solution.
Can I get a follow-up question?
Sure.
Okay. You brought us to a very good point where people are considering, like, how big a priority is this? Now, if I take a look at your guys' Facebook page, like, St. Lucia is in a pretty catastrophic situation based on the description that you're giving there. The economy is wrecked. It's like before it's like drowning in blood. So really, is this $250,000 car, given the collapse of, given the fact that, like, according to your Facebook page, it is almost the end of the world in St. Lucia?
Really?
Is this $250,000 car really a priority for this country, for this opposition, at this time when this government is controlling 90% of the parliament? They have a constitutional majority. Is that the priority?
The $250,000 may not be, but governance is very important and goes to the heart of everything that happens in this country.
Do you think that the people?
Well, I want to support what
because as a journalist, I remember very important issues like the groundwork, for example, that just did not get over with people.
So I want to say that the reason for the press conference today being narrowed to discuss this item is to give it its space, but not to interfere or in any way to believe that it should overshadow cost of living issues in this country, the unemployment issues in this country, the health standards in this country, and the crime. And so we are having a town hall meeting on, I think, Sunday in Ancillary. I will be in attendance, other people will be in attendance, and we continue to put the government under pressure on those issues. But very important to do what Spider said, is that St. Lucia is presumed to be a democratic country. It's presumed to be. And we have a parliamentary system that was designed for it to be a democratic country. And in that system, that there are three authorities of power. One is your executive, the other one is your legislator, and the other one is the judiciary. Now, we already have a system, sadly, where you just made the point. The executive and the legislator are one and the same. Yeah? Hardly believe that 15 people or 14 people who sit in cabinet are going to come to parliament and vote against what they've already decided and approved in cabinet. Okay, that's a problem. But knowing that, it makes the requirement for the judicial system to be independent even more important. And the purpose of the judicial system is to make sure that the legislators, because they can go to parliament and change whatever law they want to. Okay? And as you just said, they have this superpower right now, and they seem to be acting as if they're not accountable to anyone. And they're going to change these powers. It's for the judiciary to make sure that those new laws are not in contravention of the Constitution and in particularly to people's civil rights. So when we have a case like this, forget the money, in which there seems to be so many breaches of confidence, so many people who are acting on behalf and should be acting on behalf of the public, not doing so, then it's a failure of the system. And if the system fails, then we have something else. So it means that we're now going to end up, what, into an autocratic government? And nobody can do anything about that?
My next question, what really are your options? It looks like you have some kind of a legal roadblock here.
Well, look, it's only, they can only get away in this instance with what the people let them get away with. Right? So sadly, I think the cynicism that people have, they need to wake up and shake that off. Because you vote a government in, but with the presumption that they're going to perform within the confines of the rule of law. And if they're not doing that, then you can come out and make your voice heard. And certainly that is what we're building up to. We're getting to the point here where if things are as bad as they are, and we're only in the second year, and some of the infractions that this government have committed are so egregious, I mean, you're going to tell me you're going to go and borrow $200 million to fix up an old
2% over 20 years?
An old building?
Almost like free money?
Right? Whereas you could go in for $50 million and fix up the existing building?
But for $200 million at 2% over 20 years, like, even if I didn't need a loan, it would be, I would have a fiduciary responsibility to take that money and put it in an ordinary account of banking solution where it will earn more, and I could pay off that loan and earn interest
and
by
maybe-
sitting down and doing nothing.
And maybe, but the fact is...
And so doesn't he have a fiduciary responsibility if he did not take this loan?
That what you're saying
That
is
would
that what
be
is happening?
that would be something to attack him
You
for.
sound
He
like
did not give
you
that opportunity.
You sound like you have more plans than the government.
I'm saying, as a person who has taken loans.
If we would hear, at least if we
As a
heard that
person
from
who
the
has taken
government, we would
loans.
know that at least they're thinking.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, the GPH deal, I think the members of the media are here. Did I not hear right a couple of weeks ago that Hilaire said that once they sign the deal, they're going to make the contract public? I mean, they had a press conference, not one number, no details, nada. How am I to believe it's a different deal from what was being done before? $40 million of investment, yet you're going to assign $400 million worth of revenue to the company for 40 years? You're already boasting that there's going to be a huge increase in cruise ship arrivals, right? So that means that all that money of those cruise ship arrivals is going to whom? Going to the new company. And meanwhile, the promise that we made and the promise that you put in your own manifesto that you would do a cruise ship terminal in the South, because that makes all the sense in the world, where's that? What's happened? I mean, if I was a citizen of the South, there is no person should feel more aggrieved after supporting a government so thoroughly. Beaufort North and Labrie have never been Flabo, have always been Labour. And when you go to the South in 2021, people were lining up at the banks to put their money in. All of that is gone. There's nothing taking place in the South. Don't even get me going on agriculture.
So true.
All right? So unemployment is on the rise. Cost of living. So you're going to tell me the logic. We all accept that cost of living. They've been written about every day. And what's your solution to the cost of living? I'm going to impose a 2.5% tax. How is that going to make it better? And it's being implemented without a conscience. Oh, it's not on food. Really? It will indirectly be on food, because if in fact the cost of operations in the grocery stores and the distributors goes up, they're going to pass that increase on to other items. Come on!
Question. Let's go back to that loan that he was talking about.
But I'd rather, I'm going to be doing several other press conferences. I've allowed myself, sadly, to go. What I'd like to do is to really close the discussion on this issue. And we had a special press conference on it because it's not about just the case. There are other implicating things. I think that this is an attack on the democracy of our country. I think this is on the attack of individual rights. I think this is on the attack of the separation between government and the judiciary.
What will you do?
What do you mean, what am I
What
doing?
are your options now?
I have to wait. I have to have trust in the system. That's why I'm saying to you, the custodians of the judiciary, I'm hoping that they're going to come out. An entity, for instance, the Bar Association,
Yeah.
that has remained quiet on all of these issues, are they going to say anything? Comes to the fundamental of their own sector. Okay? There are other persons who are custodians of the judiciary. I have to sit back. I don't want to prejudice. These are ongoing cases. I want to make it very clear that I'm going to sit and wait to hear what they're going to do. I'm giving the system the benefit of the doubt. But I have chosen in all of our actions not to get on a platform and call people names or to make allegations that I cannot prove. And anything I say, I'm happy to prove it in a court of law. There's 4 defamation cases I have with Richard Frederick. 4. I should be very aggrieved because the cases have not proceeded. And the judge at the time decided, because of the case that was going on with the Privy Council, they were going to wait. Well, the case with the Privy Council is over. But I don't want to use any special authority or any special seniority that the average person cannot. Already I have been given an advantage. Okay? It's an advantage I'm aware of. I've had personal resources, my own personal resources, that I have been able to use to file these cases. I know of people in this country whose children or wives or family member died at the hospital, or something happened to them on public property, and do not have the money, or no lawyer will even give them the time of day. This is what we have to solve. And I think that what I'm trying to do here is to push the system, to make sure the system can work. And certainly from a government perspective, a policy perspective, you know that because you were in charge of the ministry. This idea of subsidizing people by giving them a waiver of VAT is ridiculous. It's absurd. You talk about these young kids coming from single mothers, mothers who have never had a job. That's why I said we must adopt these mothers. We must become the father. I say to you, we must. And we must be honest with ourselves to provide an opportunity for young people in which they can believe if I work hard, I can also play hard. But as a young person, to look at getting a job in the construction area, maybe like a little quick cash, but am I going to be able to build a house? Can I send my kids to school? Can I travel? Can I go out to the nightclubs? Can I do all these things? Can I have a nice phone? If the answer is no, some of them have said to us already in their actions, I'd rather live short and well than live long in pain. Those are real issues. And to your point, we should be discussing them. But I go to Parliament, I'm ridiculed in Parliament. I smile. I participate in my process. Everything to oppress me, to suppress me, to prevent me from participating, everything is being done. That's why I'm so happy with the people who came and walked with me. And I'm hoping more and more people in this country are going to realize that this government has lost its way. This government is not an honest government. They have breached our trust at every way. And this last attempt to take away the separation between government and the judiciary, we better wake up, because if they are successful in doing this, our democracy as we know it is gone.
One more little question that you just brought up, and I had it, that the separation of estates, first and second, and third, are, you said, you described it somewhat like a sacred fundamental democratic foundation, right? Like the most.
The most important thing is democracy. There are many different types of democracies in the world.
You described it as the most sacred.
I'm saying to you
and
that
I wanted to know if you thought.
I don't like it when you put words in my mouth. So that's
We'll check it later.
I know, but that's why I just wanted to reiterate, right? So I'm saying to you that democracy is a very important quality. And this country, based on the parliamentary system that we have, is based on a democracy. The fundamentals of that democracy are the separation of power. You have your executive, you have your legislator, and you have your judiciary. Sadly for us, because of our size, and we've known this for the longest time, the executive and the legislator, which is parliament, are one and the same.
Do you think those separations are more important than free speech, perhaps?
But it all speaks to it, because the thing that is the fundamental, the rules of it are your Constitution. And your Constitution speaks about the separation of power. And I'm just saying to you, the reason why in a democracy that there's a separation of power, and particularly with the judiciary, is that there has to be that independent group that can go through the noise. And fundamentally, everything is about protecting the liberties of the people, that there is not inequity in our system. So this is why we're here today, because this is not about $250,000. This is an abuse of our system. This is about persons in authority getting preference.
Do you understand how that sounds coming from the government that just lost 2 years ago just lost 90% of the seats in Parliament. Do you understand how? For whatever reasons this government is saying.
Well, let's deal with the reality of the issues confronting us. And in addition to what the political leader, the leader of the opposition, has just said with regard to the separation of powers, in addition to the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature, we have some institutions who must take a stand as well. Very important among those institutions is the media.
Is the fourth estate.
Okay. So, what is happening now with the media? Not only has the government hijacked the media by recruiting most.
That is not a fact.
The government has
Media managers
engaged
tend to be.
the
Media managers tend to be
the government.
The problem is that media managers
I want
tend
you
to
to-
not want to.
I want you to refute. I want you to refute what I'm about to say.
Okay.
The government has engaged many of the leading media personalities,
Individuals.
as individuals, as part of government machinery, PR machinery. Number two, we have seen in recent days clear evidence of the high-handedness of government ministers in terms of how they handle the media. They tell them what they can say, where they can go, and what they should stay clear of. That is concerning. That must be taken heed of, and the media must take a stand on that so as not to lose their independence. It is not the responsibility of politicians to do that for them. They have to take that stand and ensure that they protect the role that they ought to play as an institution in society.
And I'm happy to continue this conversation off air.
All right, he asked for a refutation.
I know. We're happy to sit.
You asked for a refutation.
We're happy.
I can call names if you like.
We're happy to sit down afterwards. And is there any other questions that we'd like to?
So basically what you're saying is the reason that you are pursuing these cases is the principle. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
You mentioned the advantage that you've been given, basically saying that your financial situation affords you certain liberties that the average citizen is not affording. So you're saying the reason that you are pursuing these cases is the principle. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. I believe that the institutions that we have, the reputation and the integrity of the institutions that we have, from what I've seen both as a prime minister and in opposition, is very worrisome. Now, the only resource that we have to hold these individuals and to challenge the process is through the courts. And as I said to you, the courts are expensive. You have to be very, very patient. And I have been. And as I said to you, luckily for me, and I want people to know that, luckily for me, that I'm able to do it. I know that there have been other leaders of the opposition and parties that would not have been able to do it. And therefore, what? These things would have gone unchecked.
But let me also say how important it is for those of us who are privileged in one way or another to take a stand, even when the issue doesn't directly go to affecting us personally. Because those who can take a stand through the courts ought to do it to protect not only their rights, but the rights of the rest of us. Those who can speak must take a stand and say something, okay? Because we're not personally affected, it does not mean that we should not make it our business. That is how you defend, protect, and preserve democracy.
So are we going to see some advocation on your part for things like legal aid, a more efficient judiciary? Are we going to prison rights, all of these, are we going to see you advocate for these matters now? Because I remember some talk before about adding more judges to the system so that all of those people we have on remand can have their day in court. I remember talk about building new courthouses and stuff like that. Are we going to see these matters being pursued?
But indirectly, what is happening now is a pursuit of all of those matters, because all of those matters hang on good governance and the protection of rights and the preservation of democracy. Because if you have things in place where people have their rights and can secure their rights, these situations will not exist.
And I want to say that that's what we were doing. So the building of the courthouse with the police headquarters, right? What's this government done? Go back and build custody suites on a prime piece of land? So really, if you had a choice as to where you would have built custody suites, that's where you would put it? Honestly? In the middle of town? What's that? We talked about bench trials, meaning that we can get away from juries to help speed up the process. There was even talk about getting and recruiting judges from outside because we can do online cases. We've now seen the success in being able to do online cases because there are many Commonwealth countries that have a lot of similar laws to what we have. But again, in the judiciary system, there's two aspects of it. There is the criminality of it, and I don't believe that we should depend on the judiciary to solve our crime problems. It's too late. We have to become more preventive, which is now dealing with how kids are growing up and the environments in which they're growing up, and respect. But very importantly, and I think it's important that I say this, and you know, and I get accused a lot of people say that my priority is one way or another. I want to remind us, we are running a deficit government. A deficit government in which we're not spending enough money on education, we're not spending enough money on healthcare, we're not spending enough money on security, we're not spending enough money on infrastructure, but we're running a deficit government. And you can't keep borrowing money because what happened in 2015, 2014-15 will come back to us again. Remember, something went wrong. So we have to run in parallel. We have to be able to grow the economy, be much more astute in terms of how we're spending the money with very core priorities. So the healthcare insurance system that we're proposing, there's no better system. Government does not have the resources by itself to resolve the healthcare problem in this country. Talked about, instead of subsidizing people by reducing the VAT rate, okay, is to reduce the overall rate of taxation and to create a direct social assistance, a social net program, that if you're a single mother and you have X number of kids, that we pay your electricity bill, we pay your food bill, we pay the school bills, we give enough food for the kids, we give enough. Sorry?
How do we afford that without the taxes?
Because you increase the efficiency of your taxes. The tax.
Like some Republican magic.
Well, it's not.
Top-down.
It's not. So how is it that when we reduced the VAT rate from 15% to 12.5%, the income went up, and the economy grew? So it did. All the numbers are there. So all I'm saying to you, right, is you've got to find a system to run in parallel. You can't go and spend more money that you don't have, even if there is absolute need for it, without at the same time figuring out how you're going to be able to grow the economy. And sadly, what people have become dependent upon in the past, foreign aid, there's no foreign aid coming. This region is perceived as being a higher income region. And more importantly, the problems that American citizens are facing, Canadian citizens are facing, European citizens, they're not interested in their governments giving aid to the extent that they were before. And we have got to take care of ourselves, and we need a much more responsible and accountable government. And it requires all of us to participate. Too many solutions don't know their constitution, don't understand the structure of their governance, okay, and are quickly swayed to believe that everybody's a crook. Right? We can't continue to make those arguments on hearsay. And that's why an independent judiciary is very, very important. An independent police force. I mean, what is going on in the police force right now is a shame. I mean, I think the last time I heard the Prime Minister speak, there's nobody in charge? Is that what he said? Who's in charge?
Right now, acting commissioner of police is running.
But he's not the acting commissioner of police. He's the acting commissioner of police. He's the acting deputy commissioner of police. But he's not the acting commissioner of police. I don't know. I mean, it's not my words, right? And all of that is why? Because you don't want to deal with what the issue is. The issue is not a political issue. The issue is one of integrity. If you have an individual at that level in which there are so many allegations, for his own sake, and for the sake of the persons who are making the allegations, allow there to be independent investigation and move on. But this idea to believe that you can cover it up and ignore it, and it's not important, is absurd, because it brings into disrepute our institutions again. Now, if the Prime Minister cannot understand it, and his cabinet can understand that, then civil society ought to, and the people have to. And this is why I have to say to you, I have much more confidence in the people of this country than I do of the civil society institutions we have. Because the people on the ground are the ones that are feeling it the most. And the people on the ground, if you go and speak to them, can tell you, fluff and buff, they were fooled at the last election. And I genuinely believe United Workers' Party and the team of men and women that we're going to put together will be the ones to take St. Lucia out of the crisis that it's in. The question is, how long are we going to allow this to continue? How deep of a hole are we going to? Because I have, for one, and many people that I know, have lost trust in this government. They don't believe anything that they're saying. It's just one lie after another lie. One contradiction after another contradiction.
I think at this juncture, it may be a good time, since we have gone on for quite a while, for us to bring this press briefing, this press conference to an end, unless political leader, you have any final words that you want to say? We want to. That's right. We want to thank you very much, and just to ask the listeners to stay tuned, because not only will there be subsequent press conferences on Sunday, we invite you to be present or to listen, to tune in, which is we're streaming live, to our town hall meeting that will take place in Ancillaria, to be exact. And there will be subsequent town hall meetings throughout the country where we'll be bringing the message, highlighting the issues, and that you can, make yourself become acquainted and abreast with what is going on in your country. I want to thank all of you, members of the media, who were present this morning. We want to thank you for your questions. We want to thank all of those locally and in the diaspora who have been following on live stream. And we want to thank everyone for your participation and for tuning in. Thank you very much, and have a good day.
Thank you.
United Workers' Party. We were born in 1964, brothers and one sister, fed by a deep faith in God and in ourselves, with a common purpose: to fight the cause for those who can't, to grow and develop our St. Lucia to meet the basic social and economic needs of our people, a job for every man and woman, decent, affordable housing, universal education, quality medical care regardless of level of income, adequate social security, especially for senior citizens and the disabled. We believe in religious freedom, democracy and the rule of law, racial and social harmony, elimination of gender discrimination and political victimization, free enterprise, cultural, social and economic progress, conservation of our environment, economic empowerment of St. Lucians and indigenous ownership of economic activity, economic empowerment of St. Lucians and indigenous ownership of economic activity, regulation of foreign investment for the development of our country. We are the party with vision. We are the party that develops. We are proud of our decades of success. We believe in ourselves. We are proud of ourselves. We are the preferred party. We are the party of choice. 2024, together we celebrate our 60th birthday. We are one family. We are the United Workers, and this is our party, the United Workers Party.